October 29th at 5 o'clock in the council room at City Hall. And tonight we're going to review the 2021 budget and emphasis on McMillan Library and other budgets. And then third will be a consideration approval of 2021 Water and Light Commission's budget. So we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves. Dean?
Dean Veneman, Alderman, filling in for Steve Coe.
Thad Kubishak, committee member.
Shane Blazer, Mayor.
Jay Bemke, Alderman. Tim DeSorcy, Finance.
Brian. Anyone on the that's zooming in that may want to introduce themselves? Sue? Sue Schill? Okay, that's the only one I see. Okay, we'll begin with McMillan Library. If you can come up to the podium, and then you got to push the green light on the mic to speak.
I have to stand back here to be on camera. We're presenting at the mayor's request, and as usual, we presented a zero increase appropriation request to the city. We're mainly funded by the city. We are city employees. It's a city facility, but we also receive significant funding from the county, and I've presented at the county board. We're waiting for their action on our request there. Our funding from them is a reimbursement for services rendered in previous years. In the previous year, 2019, our request for the city is an appropriation because we are city employees, and it comes as an appropriation. We combine our funding from the county, our funding from the city, our other funding, and that goes to the library board, who sets our budget lines, and that's how that works. There's not a lot more to say because we're requesting exactly the same amount of money we received last year. And if you have questions, I will have answers for you.
Any capital outlay, like, I think I read the elevator or something like that?
We have a request that we made for capital improvements to replace the elevator at the library. The elevator is 50 years old. It's a generation of codes behind the elevator in City Hall, so that it is it's more likely to have problems, and it's more likely to have leaks, and we want to fix all that. It also has very old controls that they don't make anymore, that they don't repair anymore. There are several elevator maintenance companies in the area. Only one of them basically will touch our elevator at this point. The other ones have told us they don't work with elevators that have that kind of equipment that is that old, because they can't get parts for them, so they don't want to undertake a maintenance on it. So it would be a good thing to deal with that. So we have a capital request in for that.
How much are you estimating?
I believe, is it $80,000 or is it $78,000?
Can't remember.
Tim will know. Tim will know in a second. It's about $80,000 to do a complete renovation of it. It would be new controls. It would be out of service for 4 to 6 weeks. But if it's scheduled out of service for 4 to 6 weeks, that's bad. But if it breaks, then you have to go find somebody, get on their schedule, get the things delivered, and then you're out of service for 4 to 6 weeks. So if we operate it until it breaks, we could be out of service 4 to 6 months. And if we deal with it at this point, we'll be out of service 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Andy was pretty much in the ballpark. It's
the estimate was $80,999.
Yep.
Any other questions people may have? Jake?
I was just wondering, you've got the solar system up and running on the library, I'm assuming that's all.
The solar system's been up since August 2017. We're on a 6-year plan where it's owned by somebody else, and they are taking the tax credits and depreciation. At the end of 6 years, which will be 2023, we will buy it from them at cost. And at that point, it becomes, not their solar system. At this point, we're buying energy from them on a contract.
So we're not seeing any savings from this at this time?
We're seeing some savings, but the big savings, the real savings come later. Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't help our budget at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I just handed out, and just kind of, Andy had alluded to it earlier, and it just kind of shows you the funding for the library. When you look at the library expenditure operating of $1,955,000, you can see the various funding sources, that being, the county appropriation of an estimated $642,000. There's the coffee house income of $10,000. Then we have some operating revenues, various things, fines, photocopies, and other items of $19,150. They annually apply $20,000 of their estimated carryover from the previous year's appropriation to offset this year's. And that's $20,000, and showing the residual property tax levy appropriation of $1,263,000. So it just kind of shows you how the library is funded. So I wanted to lay that out for the council. I just have one question on the revenues. There were significant declines in photocopies from 14,000 to 2,500, and from fines from 12,000 to 5,000. Is there any reason for that, or a change in?
Our traffic, well, we were closed for several,
Right.
For a number of weeks, and our traffic is down significantly. And so we're seeing fewer people come in to make copies. That's not just photocopies, it's prints from our, from computers, and that dropped real significantly. We can hope that next year that recovers, but that's out of our control, so we're not budgeting for all this to just turn back on January 1st. But some of those are offsets, so the more copies we make, we have expenses on our copies. Our coffee house income is down, but so is our coffee house revenue. So I mean, those are just kind of pass-throughs. We're not making money, particularly on copies or on the coffee shop. And we just waived a lot of fines when people weren't comfortable coming into the building. So that.
I was just wondering on the
Yeah.
fines, because I know we have discussed in previous budgets about something about maybe not charging fines as much as we used to, and I didn't know if you'd implemented that, or if that's still kind of under discussion or under
That's something
consideration.
we'd like to do, because it is something that libraries throughout the country are eliminating fines. It generally does not affect whether your materials gets returned or not. When people don't return materials, they still pay for the books if they don't bring them back. We pursue them pretty thoroughly, and we use the TRIP program to go after them, and they don't escape us.
Any other questions or here?
I guess I should have asked you this previously. Can you explain the endowment, how much is there, and what the requirements are on usage of it?
The endowment was started in 1970, basically. There's always been an endowment before that, but the modern endowment started in 1970 with the building of the library, and it was meant for extra things, so that it's not for salaries, it's not for heat and light, it's not for cleaning the carpets or things like that. It's for extra things, so it's the things that aren't covered in our budget. It is, part of that is programming, part of that is just, if we're doing something new and different and we want to try it, often that comes out of the endowment, and the endowments put a lot of money into making the facility better than the facility would otherwise be. So the endowment paid for us getting into the solar project. The endowment paid to make our roof not a 20-year roof, but a 30-year roof, which is good and saves everybody money, and everyone's happy to have a better roof there. The endowment is putting something approaching $750,000 into the Learning Futures project. Maybe less than that, but they will put a significant amount into the Learning Futures project, which is our big renovation of over 15,000 square feet of the library. So the endowment is putting real dollars into making the library better and stronger, but they don't put money into operations type things. They put it into either extra special things to make, to help us do things that we wouldn't be able to, or they put it into things to make the building even better than the building would otherwise be. There's currently more money than usual in there because the $1 million grant from Legacy is in there. So before that, it was at about a little over 2 million, 2.1, 2.2, depending upon the market. It's currently $1 million more beyond that, but we're going to be spending nearly $2 million out of the endowment for this project. We continue to fundraise, and we're continuing to seek money, and it's hard to do that when you can't get within 6 feet of people. But we're continuing to do that, and we're going to continue that through at least the end of the year.
Can you explain when that project will go out to bids and the potential construction of it?
Sure. We're just finishing the design phase. So where the walls go, where the ceilings go, what gets replaced, what doesn't get replaced, that we just finished up. Our architect will be working on construction plans where we then specify colors, furniture, what light fixtures, all that stuff gets specified. We think that'll take through probably the end of the year because the board has some decisions to make in there. If you make some choices, things get more expensive. If you make other choices, they get more affordable. And on a $2 million project, you watch it all. So we think we'll be going out to bid sometime after the first of the year, which means we'll get them back and probably get a contract in March, and then we'll probably spend 6 months building, 6 months of construction in the library. We will have the lower level, the commons, and the lower lobby open during that time, and we will have the children's room open. So the library will be open. We'll be doing business. We expect most of our materials to be available that entire time. But it is the biggest renovation project we've had since the building opened. It's a 42,000 square foot building, and this is over 15,000 square feet of it being renovated at once. And that's 15,000 of our public space. So it is a big chunk to do at a time, but our adult room is almost 11,000 square feet, and there's no way to do half of that. It's hard to incrementally replace carpet on 11,000 square feet. So it's a big project, but we're looking forward to it, and it matches a change in service that we're looking for. We're looking for makerspace. We're looking for more meeting rooms. We're looking for more spaces where someone can sit in a quiet space, look at a computer, and hold a meeting. We don't have that kind of space now. All our space is big and open. So we're we ended up designing ourselves for a post-COVID world to a great extent, even though a lot of the design happened before this hit.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Tim, you have the library and other budgets. What would be, I know we're at water and light, but you want to talk about another budget?
Yeah, it was just if, you know, it was the opportunity if the committee wanted to address any of the other smaller operating budgets. But like I said, you know, if you have any questions about any of the other departmental budgets, you know, reach out to me and I can get you an answer, or obviously you can contact the department head. But, you know, the whole premise is that we kind of go through some of the larger operating budgets and outlays. And then, you know, other budgets, that was just there if you had any questions about any other specific budgets.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, thanks. We'll have water and light. Jeff?
Thank you. Does everybody have a copy of our budget? Great. I do have a hard copy if you need one.
Yeah. It should have been, it was attached with the meeting notice, so they should have electronic,
I'll
but
take-
if anyone
Yeah,
wants it,
I'll take a copy.
Okay.
take the hard copy.
Yeah, I'll take one too, Joe.
Okay.
I'm from Wisconsin Rapids, so I like to use as much paper as possible.
All right. Thanks for giving us the opportunity this evening to bring up our budget and answer any questions you might have. What I was kind of hoping to do today is kind of go through a couple highlights of our budget, talk a little bit about the capital, the operational side, and then Jem and I can answer any specific questions you might have on our budget. As everybody knows, we're really heavily regulated by the Public Service Commission. One of the things they require of us is that we have an activity-based accrual accounting system, so it's a little bit different. Revenues are recorded when they're actually earned, not when we receive them. Capital assets that the utility purchases are capitalized and depreciated over their estimated useful life, not expensed in the year of purchase. And all activities are accounted for under the same account. So, for example, maintenance of water mains, you're going to have labor, equipment, supplies, contractor payments, all of those expenditures kind of, included in the same activity, as opposed to having a salary account, a supply account, those kind of things. And that really benefits the utility when we're doing benchmarking against comparable utilities. The actual costs, if a company or like if a utility contracts something out versus doing it in-house, those same costs are still in the same account. So that really benefits us that way. Jumping into our budget, there's two main sections of our budget. The first half of the budget approximately is our capital budget. The second half is the operational budget. For the utility purposes, capital projects are projects or items that are over $2,500 and have a benefit of more than 1 year for the utility. Page 4 gives you a really high-level summary of where our capital budget is. This budget was approved by our commission on October 15th. You can see in 2021, every category, electric, water, common, and IT are all lower than they were in 2020. And that's kind of due to the revenue and the collection uncertainty going into 2021. In total, we're down about $890,000 or about 17% than we were at the initial budget approved last November in 2020 for 2020. As you get into, page 5 through page 17 is going to give you a detail of each of those areas. It's going to start with a 5-year high-level plan, and then give you more detail on the 2021 projects. Just one thing I wanted to point out on page 11, when we're talking about the water department projects, the first line on there is the water main replacement. Those three projects there, agree with the most current information from the city on the joint street projects that we're doing in 2021. So we made sure those tie together. Any questions on any of the capital projects presented in there? Okay. Starting on page 19 is when we get into the operations budget. So the operations budget is the revenue and then the day-to-day expenditures to serve our customers. When we take a look at page 20, we're talking about an operating rate of return. You can see 2017, 2020's estimate, and then 2021's budget. When the PSC sets the utilities rates, they use the idea of an operating rate of return. So they're going to set our rates or our revenues to cover operating expenditures and then provide an additional rate of return. And that rate of return is used to cover non-operating expenses, such as debt. And it also is used as additional money to cover capital projects above and beyond what depreciation covers. So we all know, we're replacing a pole from 1970. That pole was definitely a lot cheaper then than it is to put in now. That depreciation that we're getting on that is not going to cover that pole in 2021. So page 23 gives us the calculation for electric. And if we take a look at that, the calculation about 2/3 of the way down the page shows us the average rate base for electric is just over $38.4 million. And then to get to the net operating income, it's the operating revenues, less our operation and maintenance expenses, less depreciation, and less taxes. So the electric utilities estimated to have a rate of return in 2021 of about 4.78% on our $38.4 million of net assets. And that is pretty close to our authorized rate because we just went through a rate case. It took about 12 months to get through the Public Service Commission. It just got implemented this month. So that's typically in the year after a rate case, you're really close to that authorized rate of return because they're basing that test year on your expenditures that you plan to do that year. Pages 24 through 26 just kind of walk through the revenues and corresponding O&M expenditures to get to that number. And then the other page I wanted to point out was page 29. It's the same calculation except for the water utility. You can see for the water utility, the average rate base is about $24.3 million. We do the same calculation to get to the operating income of $630,000. A little bit lower rate of return, 2.6% is what we're estimating for 2021. A little bit lower than the authorized rate of 5.6. And that's really due to the water demand, particularly in the industrial side going into 2021. So with that, I don't know if there's any other questions on either the capital or the operations budget.
Hey, Scott.
Mayor?
So on a private utility or a co-op utility, are they hindered or capped with a rate of return?
An investor-owned utility also has a rate of return. Their rates of return are higher because they need to pay shareholders on top of that. So their rates of return are usually 11, 12%.
So I guess we don't have the luxury, or lack of a better word, to basically raise rates to cover or offset or build in the ability to offset the non-payers because of our lower rate of return?
Correct.
Is that okay? Because I'm just trying to point out that the private companies have that ability to build in that level of protection where we don't have that ability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Jeff, I'm looking at page 20, more of a generic question. I'm looking at net operating income, and granted, budget forecasting is always very challenging. But on the electric side, it goes from this year estimated $995,000 next year to $1.8 million on the electric side. But then obviously the water side, it goes from $1.1 million down to $630,000. You just suggested that on the water side, it could be from the industrial. Again, this is not to put you on the spot, but this is more of a kind of a generic question. I assume that there's an anticipation of generating revenue from the new Metalco coming into town. Then the question is now with the paper mill ceasing operations, or at least temporary, potentially temporary, everybody gets their fingers crossed, but now we're not going to lose as much potential revenue from that because they had their own power source. Can you kind of, without specifically answering these questions, I don't really have a question, but can you kind of elaborate how a new customer, especially an electric customer in town, how that would affect? Do we have, is there like a limit in terms of our infrastructure, for example, comparatively to a wastewater treatment plant? We've only got so much treatable space that if a big company comes in, or a company that needs to utilize a lot of wastewater treatment, there's a lot of communities that are limited for getting in a customer like that. But on the electric side, is there a law of diminishing returns, or is that something that we could accommodate very easily with our utility? And then that kind of the part B would be what are we seeing for gains and losses for both water and electric with the paper mill situation?
Sure, I can touch that last one first. The big change in the water is definitely the paper mill. I mean, that's the big reduction from 2020 to 2021. As you mentioned, you know, they had their own electric utility, so we served very little load with the mill. I think they had one of the houses or something nearby that was an electric property with us. The main reason why the electric income is going up is the rate case that we just completed in October. It's going to generate some revenues, but again, Metelco coming in and starting up operations, we have that built into 2021 also, and that's quite the substantial increase. And I guess I can defer to Jem on the kind of the capacity issue that we have for electric.
Plenty of capacity to serve whatever we need to. We've worked hard over about 13 years I've been here, building redundancy into the system and adding capacity. And we just tapped the Coin substation, which was predominantly used by the paper mills to serve the Metelco load. So now we have another large substation that we own part of, and we can eventually serve growth in the Buren-Affen if it happens off that sub. So no matter where they locate in town, we're pretty equipped to handle it.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thanks. That's the end of our meeting, adjournment. Any other questions before we leave, or?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, if you could actually make a motion to approve the water and light budget.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve the water and light budget for 2021.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. His ayes have it. Thanks. I didn't know that was an. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you. And we're adjourned at 5:32. Thanks.
Thanks for coming down, guys.